Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Wildy, Simmonds and Hill Publishing, and it's an excellent book. I think it'll be extremely helpful for anybody who is practicing as either a barrister or solicitor, because it's dealing with that inevitably interesting and time-consuming topic of legal research. It's called Legal Research, a Practitioner's Handbook. It's now very welcome in its second edition, written by Peter Clinch, and there's a foreword by Jon Beaumont. My wife Elizabeth and I looked at this book, and we had a discussion about it because obviously we're very well aware of the amount of deviling that has to go on with any particular case. And for our review title, for the book review we've written on this title, we said a comprehensive work of reference, a comprehensive work of research referencing specifically aimed at the busy legal practitioner. And that's quite important. I managed to get that bit wrong. Research referencing, because that's really what this is about. And in this day and age, written advocacy is very important. So research referencing is the key. Let's look at the book first of all. It's a hardback, green cover, pea green cover. There's the spine, and then there's the back. You can see there's quite a lot of information on the back, setting out what's in the book. We borrowed a few quotes from it just to give you an idea of what's actually in the work itself. It runs to under 500 pages. You can see there's the index at the back. It's page numbering for the index, so you should find things pretty quickly. Then there's an index of published materials, in other words, a bibliography then at the back. That includes a whole range of different materials that they have looked at. There's a subject index as well, which I did find quite helpful, looking at specifically like barrister information about database, civil procedure, Harvard system, so on. Then there are some appendices, and so we'll look at those in a minute. This appendices is actually, let's just have a look at it. I think it's probably a glossary of some sort. It's Appendix 5. And we'll just get to it. Appendix 5. There we go. Yes, popular names index to UK cases and EU legislation cases. Yes, that's quite helpful, because I think for someone who's relatively new, they will find it quite difficult sometimes to find various things. It's done on an A to Z basis. For instance, Bailey. They've got things like the bank branches directives, all these Barcelona conventions, all these various things. Let's go to the front of the book. There's the front page there. There's another bit of the front page for detail. You've got some information on Wildy there. Then you've got the actual content section itself in various parts. It runs to a total of 18 pages and 4 parts, A, B, C, D. Then after that you've got 5 appendices, then the subject index, and then the other bits and pieces at the back, and then you've got various pieces of figure work. You get into there's an introduction there, quote, "Knowledge is of two kinds. We know a subject ourselves, or we know where we can find information about it," by James Boswell, on his life of Johnson. And Peter Clinch has written his general introduction in January 2013, and I'm recording this a few years later in the early part of 2017. Andrew Riddick is mentioned as the commissioning editor from Wildy's, and then you get into the actual book itself. There's a content section just to set out where you can find things quite quickly. Then you do have the paragraph numbering, which is quite useful because you should be able to find things pretty quickly. There isn't any form of footnoting as such throughout, but you do have a very substantial amount of information. And in the middle of the book, updating known law, for instance, there again you can see the structure with the paragraph numbering and the sort of content section at the beginning. It's a very useful book, and I'm sure for anybody who is embarking on a legal career, this is something that they should be seriously thinking of looking at, because it will help them in the early years of practice understand how to find things. So what do we say about this book? Well, the second edition of this excellent book on legal research by Peter Clinch will be welcomed by a wide range of lawyers and a more general readership too, because of its common sense approach to researching law at a time of turbulent change for the way we do our business. And I think that's right, bearing in mind the very large number of unrepresented parties. It's a comprehensive reference work which is specifically aimed at the busy practitioner, and I think the readership would include solicitors, barristers, clerks and trainees, and professional support lawyers of all sorts, and I think will be a boon for the newly qualified. So the new edition gives what is described as follows: practical advice on every aspect of effective legal research, problem analysis, selecting and finding the best sources, and presenting results effectively. And we wish we had had it a few years ago when we were doing the bar exams ourselves. So you get some idea of the sense that is put, and basically the formats that you've got to use when you're trying to identify a particular piece of information. Clearly on the bar course, for instance, you have the practical training exercises with legal research at the beginning, and that will assist in trying to find things in the law library and so on. But I think this book does give some very sensible suggestions. Title's been completely updated for 2013 to 14. Clinch has taken account, of course, of the expanding popularity of the PLC database, which caters for the UK law practitioner, and of course reforms since then have continued at a very fast pace, and we're looking at very big changes with the fourth industrial revolution on digitisation upon us. He's also overhauled details of the government and other official sites, both national and international, but of course this is prior to the general election in 2015. And there were significant changes from 2013 onwards concerning the approach of the courts towards the conduct and presentation of legal research, and that continues quite quickly to change things with some of the legislation in 2017 that we're now looking at. It's been delayed for quite some time, but we are now looking at, I think, quite a lot of changes again in the way we present our cases and the sorts of systems we use, because online courts will be here, and there will be a different approach, I suspect, to the way we do certainly the interlocutory side of the work. And as I've said in the review, the arrival of the online courts and developing artificial intelligence is bound to have an effect. We won't see those immediately, but they are coming in. The new material then in the book on the use of social media in legal research has also been included, although even today I would suggest it's now in need of probably further revision, as the sort of social media revolution amongst the newly qualified emerges as a very strong player in this decade of the 21st century, with all the unknowns and the facilities that we have at the moment. The actual systems we can use will obviously be changing. And there are 4 parts to the work, which are explained by the author in the following way. Part A covers identification and analysis, followed by advice on how to select the best sources and formats. That's paper or electronic for research. And can I just say we're moving very much towards the electronic side. Part B looks at information most frequently sought by practitioners, listing sources with analytical comments, and for the selection of the most complex how to use instructions developed to a standard template. Jurisdictional coverage includes England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland and the European Union, with the addition of information on key sources in European human rights and international law. That of course will eventually change, but not in the early future. Part C looks at sources on how to make the presentation of the results of legal research more effective, and finally Part D supplements the first 3 parts, describing in non-technical language how a practitioner might get the best value for money when buying information, whether print or online, from commercial law publishers. There's a lot on the market. I mean, when I first started rather a long time ago, there was very little on the market, but we were living in a different era. Certainly today there is a tremendous amount available, and I'm glad, because as I indicated right at the beginning, one of our biggest challenges is the unrepresented party, and unfortunately parties who've done it themselves think they know what's going on and sometimes don't, and so you can have quite a lot of difficulty. I did find the appendices to be a great assistance and support for all involved in legal matters because they cover lots of detailed areas. That's indexes to abbreviations for acts, journals and law reports, a glossary of the technical terms used in legal research, a summary of the practice directions, statements and decisions of the UK courts relating to legal research, a table of guidance on how to devise more effective searches on the four most popular commercial databases, and finally a popular names index, which I indicated, which is the final appendix, which covers legislation in cases relating to the United Kingdom and the European Union. Now, I said at the beginning, and I think it's worth repeating, Boswell made a comment in Life of Samuel Johnson, on the 18th of April 1775. It's a long time ago, and I just remind you, knowledge is of two kinds. We know a subject ourselves, and we know where we can find information about it. Now, I repeat that because Clinch gives us the tools and the direction with legal research, and it's the right direction for all of us to follow. And I thank him very much, because I would have appreciated this when I was doing my exams all those years ago. We didn't have that facility then, so I'm grateful that we do now. As I say, the publication date for the second edition is 2013, and I'm recording it a few years later. There's the book again. I don't think legal research has changed that much at the moment. There's the back. The reason being that we are changing the way we do things, but it's still a basic system that you have to operate in order to conduct your legal research. And that is one of the vocational requirements, of course, of any lawyer, whether it be a solicitor or a barrister. This is the middle of the book, pre-legislative proposals. You see the numbering, paragraph numbering at the sides to find things quite easily. This talks about green papers and white papers. Rather topical at the moment because we've had a bit of a return to orthodoxy with the May government, where we're now back to having consultations, then draft bills, rather than a slightly different approach which was used some years ago by previous Prime Ministers. Well, thank you, Mr. Clinch, and thank you very much to Wildy, Simmonds and Hill for an excellent publication. Bye-bye.